Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat, and today I am doing my July wrap-up part 2. So I am a bit of an insomniac right now. I'm almost in my 3rd trimester of pregnancy, and I cannot sleep before around 2:30 in the morning every day. So at first I was trying to read the most boring books on my shelves, to try to not excite myself into staying up and to trying to like relax myself back into sleep. So I have predictably 3 DNFs here that I read for that, and I'm just gonna get them out of the way. So the first one is The Invisible Kingdom by Idan Ben-Barak. This is about microbes. The author's tone is kind of condescending and not funny, and also it was so boring. It wasn't putting me to sleep, because my insomnia is like really strong, but I just hated it, so goodbye. Then I picked up The Glass Castle by Jeanette. This is basically the OG educated. Woman grows up, she becomes quite successful, but her childhood was chaotic, and really the children should have been taken away from these parents because they're dangerous and unhealthy and malnourished and etc. I got 20% of the way into it and I was like, no, I can't be fucked. And then the last one is Matilda by Shelley. This one I actually got 50% of the way through and was like, I just don't care. This is about a woman in Victorian England whose father comes back to see her after 16 years and he falls in love with her, and when he tells her that, she's like, you're vile. He commits suicide, and then after that her life is sad and miserable. And I just like did not care to read anymore. So those are all the books that are not worth my time or your time, probably. And without further ado, let's get into the books that I think are worth my time and your time. So first I read October is the Coldest Month by Christoffer Carlsson, who is a Swedish writer, and this was so good. I ended up giving this 4 stars. So this is following Vega, who is a 16-year-old girl, and she is in this remote Swedish town that is really down on its luck. Everyone there kind of makes money through nefarious means. Picture like basically drugs and moonshine, and suddenly the police knock on her door and they're looking for her older brother, and she knows that she needs to find where her older brother is before the police do. This was so much like Winter's Bone. If you have read the book or have watched the movie, I highly recommend. It has such cold, desolate, poor small town vibes where something has happened and the police are looking for the culprit, as are the family members, and it's a race against time to find them and figure out what happened so that the people in the town can decide what to do before the police figure out what's going on. So I highly recommend, and I also really recommend Winter's Bone the movie. It's J-Law's first movie, and I think it's one of her best ever. So yeah, highly recommend. This was a short, great gem translated from Sweden. After that, I finished The Offset by Calder, Szewczak. This is a writing duo, 2 women who are friends and from England, and this is a grim, dark dystopian set in London. So basically there has been total environmental and economic collapse. Overpopulation is seen as so bad. So there's this thing called the offset, which means if you choose to have a baby, when the baby turns 18, that child chooses one of their parents to die to offset the balance of having a child. So we are following Mary, who is 17 and then 18, and she must decide which of her parents to kill. So there is Alex, who is Mary's beloved mom who used to be a doctor in like the emergency ward in the hospital, who's kind of the family glue. And then the other mom is Jack, who Miri doesn't get along with. However, Jack happens to be the leading climate reversal scientist in the world, and she has engineered willow trees that are radioactive and are slowly reversing climate damage and pollution, so to stop the earth heating up. So this was so interesting in so many ways. It's such a unique dystopian. I think it's one of my top dystopians ever, just because the concepts are so unique. So there is the macrocosm countdown of everyone on Earth dying. Then there is the next cosm, which is kind of London and the offset that they have to go through. Then there's the microcosm of the relationships between the two mothers and their daughter, and what is happening. And I just thought it was very brilliant. It's very dark. So definitely check my trigger warnings on Goodreads if you are interested in this. So after that, I read In the Watchful City, which you all voted for. This was for Fuck the Binary, for Noria's Fuckathon, because the author and main character are both non-binary. So this is set in a futuristic, kind of fantasy, steampunky world where there's a city that has been kind of cordoned off, and to protect the inhabitants from any more trauma, they use something called the Gleaming, which is an omniscient system, which is basically run by nodes, who are people who give up kind of their life to sync to the Gleaming and become part of that omniscient presence. They're capable of sorting data, but more than that, they can jump through animal bodies in the city to survey and talk to other people, like convicts or potential suicides, etc. So within this world, we are following one particular node called Anima, who encounters another being called Vessel. And Vessel is traveling around the world, collecting objects and the memories associated with those objects into a trunk. And when Vessel asks Anima if they would like to hear a story from any of the pieces, that is how the story within the story section starts. So there are actually 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe 4 short stories within the Anima Vessel like narrative. So it's a story within a story, and then one of the stories is a story within a story within a story, which I hated. So I don't really love the story within the story telling. I don't like Russian doll narratives, but some of the stories were so good, and the overall idea of this was so awesome that like I wanted to keep reading, but also I was like, I just wish it had been like done differently. But I'm very intrigued, and I will read what the author reads in the future. And overall, I gave this 3.5 stars. It wasn't perfect, but it definitely kept me intrigued. So there you have it. And then I read The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez, who is an Argentinian writer. So this was translated from the Spanish. I put this on my August TBR, but then I realized that it was due at my library the next day. So I panic read it in one day, basically. Yeah, and it was great. I gave it 4 stars overall. It tackles really dark subjects of women in Argentina who are experiencing dark things, or are seeking out dark things, or trying to escape dark things. All the stories had very similar, like, ooh, something bad is gonna happen, like, kind of vibes. So I really loved the cover, and I really loved most of the stories. They were 3.5 or 4 stars for me. There was only one that was not, and that was the longest one, which slowed my reading pace, which is why it's a 4, not higher. Some of the themes are women in darkness, visceral body horror, gore and changes, life in Argentina, Argentina, both the beautiful and the depraved, supernatural woven into daily life, such as family bones, ghosts, curses, Ouija board, witches, demons, fallen angels, and reanimation. Some of the things were so cool and just so dark. And it made me really excited to read The Things We Lost in the Fire, which is a short story collection that my library has that I'm going to read probably for September. Yes. I gave this 4 stars. It was really good. And it had similar vibes to Salt Slow by Julie Armfeld, which is one of my favorite short story collections ever. Also about darkness and women. So I really enjoyed this. And then I was reading Phoenix Extravagant. This was a DNF, but I'm going to mention it here instead of at the beginning because I actually read 70% of it and I have some thoughts. So this is basically a very thinly veiled story set in Korea during the Japanese occupation. Korea and Japan is not used, like fantasy names are used, but it is absolutely directly that. And we are following Jebi, who is a non-binary artist who just wants to paint and create art, but they're hired by the Ministry of Armor and War to paint on giant mecha dragon. There was kind of a queer interest because the lead dual prime is a woman and then the main character is non-binary and they kind of have like this thing going, and I was like, I support this relationship. But it was so slow. And then the mecha dragon was so slow. Like, it's only introduced about 60% of the way in, and then by the time I got to 70% and the action started to pick up, I did not care. I did not care anymore, and I could not continue for another 150 pages. How do you take mecha dragon adventure with queer elements and then you just dial down the action to like level 1 or 2? Like, what is that? Yeah, so I don't recommend this one at all. So then after that, I finished I Hear Your Voice, which is a Korean translation. And this one is so interesting because, wow, is it imperfect, but also like, I could not stop reading this. So this is about 2 boys who have known each other since elementary school. The main character has aphonia, where he doesn't want to speak. It's like selective mutism. And the other one, Jay, will interpret what he wants, and they're like kind of this best friendship. And then when they grow up, Jay goes to an orphanage, the main character is studying, and then things kind of really quickly descend from there because Jay is living on the streets, so you're getting a lot of very graphic, very graphic descriptions of life on the streets in South Korea. Like, think prostitution, abuse of women, abuse of men, like freezing to death, starving, like just beatings. So it's very dark and graphic. And then our main character quits university, joins with Jay, and then from there it becomes this motorcycle narrative where they're in a motorcycle street racing gang. And then a third character is introduced who is a gay cop who is in the closet, but he likes to ride motorcycles and abuse his authority over minors, especially young men. And as you can imagine, things don't end on a good note. I think that this is just such an imperfect but bizarrely compelling book that I gave it 3 stars, but I really don't regret having read it at all. And in fact, like, if I owned it, I would definitely keep it because it's one that will definitely stick with me just for the sheer... Some of the elements are just like so dark or so like, what the fuck did I just read? And then the motorcycle elements are obviously very cool. So I do recommend this, but like tentatively check my Goodreads review for triggers if you're sensitive, because there are a lot. And the last one that I read in July, I just read last night. So I had insomnia and I saw my stack of August reads and I just could not not read this. So I slipped it right into the end of July. This is Fever Dream by Samanta Schweblin, who is an Argentinian writer, and this was great and weird, and I gave it 4 stars. So the horse energy is about horses that die. Yeah, so that is my great mystery solved. But more than that, this is about a woman who is lying in a hospital bed. She can't see, and she can only speak to David, who is a young boy who is asking her about her recent recall and recent memories of events. And things devolve from there. I'm not going to say much more than that. It's really short. It only took me, I think, like an hour and a half, 2 hours to read. I thought it was excellent. I have read 3 things from Samanta Schweblin now, and this is my favorite by far. I gave this 4 stars. I gave Little Eyes, I think 3.5, and I gave Mouthful of Birds 3. So I highly recommend this if you like short, weird stuff. And I feel like this is a great bridge to end July on a high, and then also to start off Women in Translation Month, because I'm so freaking excited. So that finishes up all the books that I read in the second half of July. Let me know your thoughts. There is like a full range, I totally know. But yeah, I have really bad insomnia, so I picture myself reading a lot of books. So yeah, look forward to a lot of wrap-ups and a lot of reading. And I will talk to you soon in another video. Lots of love. Bye!